Good evening. My name is Chris Robinson, and this is my second year in ISM. ISM, for those of you who don't know or have any prior experience to it before, it stands for Independent Study and Mentorship. And what it is a program where students in Frisco ISD are allowed the opportunity to explore their interests in a wide variety of topics and find a mentor of which they can shadow or collaborate with on a final product at the end of the year to collaborate all the research that they've done throughout the year and create something that can either be implemented actually within an environment, as some students have, or something more on the ideal side, which can still help within the profession and push forward ideas and thinking in the topic that they choose, but isn't so much tangible. The title of my presentation tonight, as you can see, is The Season of Change. And the reason for that title is, although on the pamphlet it says that I'm studying land management and biology, unfortunately it'll be probably half land management, a smidge biology, but more just the experiences that I've actually had throughout this year. And the experiences I've had throughout this year cover a wide variety of topics, and all have led me to the choices I've made and the topics that I've studied and the things that I have learned, which is the most important part of the ISM journey, is what you learn throughout the experience. Not so much even what you learn in the topic, but what you learn through having to deal with professionals, people that are older than you, making cold calls for professionals, and really learning how to handle work by yourself and coming up with an independent and totally new product from something that hasn't been created. So, our teacher, Coach Goff, loves quotes, and she had us all choose quotes this semester. And my quote comes straight from Ecclesiastes, and it says, "What do people gain from all their labors at which they toil under the sun? Generations come and generation goes, but the earth remains forever." This correlates to my title, The Season of Change, because although the earth may remain, not obviously in its natural state, but it still remains as the planet that we live on, the people that inhabited that planet changed through generation to generation. And their standards, their expectations, their thoughts, dreams, and ideas and civilizations change from generation to generation. There are certainly some similar patterns, but the end result is always different. And how this correlates to my ISM journey this year is, at the beginning of the year, I had these grandiose ideas of what I was going to do, and I thought I already know what I was going to do. And from other life experience I've had, I probably should have realized that none of that was probably going to happen, because in my life a lot of change always occurs, and I have to adapt to it. I have to adapt to it a lot. And through this year in my ISM journey, I've had to adapt to a wide variety of different challenges and passions for ideas, dwindling passions for ideas, and new flames for ideas, and trying to incorporate that into my ISM journey and product, where it's something that I can look at and be proud of that I've created, while at the same time enjoying my ISM experience. That way I can use it as a springboard for my future studies and growth as a person. So for the first semester, I really was thinking on interactions between the natural environment and humans. And previously last year I studied architecture, so that was still my thought and avenue for this idea of philosophy. So for the interviews I had, I interviewed a wide variety of people within the architecture and landscape architecture field. First, I interviewed actually Travis Cisneros, who's the second person on that list, and he is the design director at Aquaterra Outdoors. Now, you also see another person on there who's a design director, and his name is Ron Spilmarski at Perkins Wills. Their roles are a bit different in that Travis Cisneros doesn't actually formulate the ideas for the designs of the buildings. He just does the renderings. A little bit of the ideas, but he does more of the renderings and the conceptual art and tangible product that goes to a client so they can see whether or not they like the ideas. Ron Stelmarski, on the other hand, he actually formulates ideas, and that's more of his main job. He still does some of the renderings, but his main job is to formulate the ideas and group all the ideas together that are within the company to create their projects. Travis Cisneros, he has one of the things that correlates between me and him is that he wanted to be an architect as well, but his path changed because he realized that architecture school, A, is a lot harder than everybody makes it out to be, and B, is very expensive for what he wanted to do. So he figured it would be better to go to community college and then get a degree in graphic design so he could do more of the artsy side of architecture within the rendering. So that's more of what he was geared towards. Next, I interviewed Dudley Raymond, and he's a landscape architect for the city of Frisco. And Mr. Raymond actually was a really interesting interview. He had actually interviewed another one of the students that is in ISM, Nicole Henderson, and so he was kind of familiar with the ISM program when I interviewed him. And we talked about how he changes the city of Frisco and how he really impacts the city of Frisco within the green spaces. I really didn't know what a landscape architect did up until then. I had done some research, but I had never really met someone that was in the field and had done those things. And Dudley Raymond, he showed me what he did. He works more on the administrative side of being a landscape architect. He is more like a contractor. He oversees the work that's being done. He communicates the ideas that wants to be communicated from the people that do more of the design and ideation. And he really oversees all that happens within the city of Frisco for the green spaces. The next interview I had was Sumit Patel, and he runs his own landscape architecture firm after being part of the severe layoffs that happened when we had our economic recession in 2008. But he bounced back, and he formed his own design studio, and he's doing quite well these days. He's done some design for the 121 pathways and doing the greenery around that area, and done some small housing projects. From him, he's really showed me the other side of business. Most people, when they think of business, they think of the people that are just greedy and want the money and are doing it for the bottom line. But his whole main point of view was he wanted really to help the people and make sure the people got the best from whatever they could do. He said that whenever he had people that come to him for a project, if he felt like his expertise wasn't what they needed, he would always submit to them what he felt like was the best person for that project. And they would always call back so he could make sure that A, he wasn't burning bridges, so that he would always have a good relationship with the clients in case they come back, and B, just because he had a genuine want to help people and make sure that they got the best product for what they wanted, instead of just trying to make money and rip them off, and really showing his moral character through what he did. The last interview I had is Richard Freiheit, and he is the land manager at Lake Louisville Environmental Learning Area, and that is right below the dam that they built to make Lake Louisville, and it's about a 2,000-acre plot, the Lake Louisville Environmental Learning Area that they have, where they're trying to restore it to prairie land, and he's in charge of looking at the land and seeing what they need to do with it, whether they need to burn certain areas to grow more plants. He does all the plant species recovering from other parts of North Texas to put within that small land that they have there, so they can create what used to be the ideal ecosystem that Texas had. Mr. Freiheit became my mentor for a bit, and due to some mutual disagreements and understandings, he wasn't my mentor. I still had a great experience with him, though, even though he was my mentor. I learned a lot from him about how to do the administrative and management work over a large group of people and areas for the Lake Louisville Environmental Learning Area. And he really also had a passion for wanting people to just enjoy beauty and the nature for what it was within North Texas, rather than looking at the bottom line, looking at the beauty and the wide scope of it, and wanting to see the full breadth of projects. So my research for my first semester was really geared towards, as I said, I was still thinking architecturally, was really geared towards environmentally conscious design principles and techniques that can be used today practically within the 21st century to create a more environmentally conscious product for clients to have. One of the design principles that I researched was wing catchers. And wing catchers is a really interesting design principle because it's actually been around for many years. The Egyptians used it, and people use it in the Middle Eastern civilizations from the beginning of time. And what they do is they take wind from one side of the building and they force it through an opening, and then that wind cools as it cool air comes into the building, and as it goes to the building, it takes all of the humidity and moisture and it forces out the other side of the building, as you can see from the left diagram. And then it cools the housing by taking all the humidity and the hot air out and leaving that nice damp, cool air in there. And then on the right side is actually a modern interpretation of the wing catcher. They have the protective dividers from bugs and weather and whatnot coming in. You see the weather louvers and the anti-bird mesh, and then it has actually electronic volume control dampers to make sure that moisture doesn't come in, even with those other protective measures outside of the internal parts of the wind catcher, making sure that the temperature inside is stayed at a more steady rate than it would with just a more natural wind catcher. The second principle I looked up, well, actually here's some more pictures of wind catchers. This is a modern kind of Art Deco take on the wind catchers. Here's original ones from the Middle East. You can see that they have openings on all sides so they can take in advantage of wind from the all side. And here's one from a home kind of in the southwestern area. You can see because of the smooth lines and the low heights of the building, that's in more of a southwestern climate, also because of the desert you can see behind it. And then there's the wind catcher right here. It has the screens for weather or birds. The second design principle I looked up was straw bale construction. And straw bale construction also has been around for a long time too. And what it does is it takes the byproduct of making cereal and hay, and then it takes that straw and it combines it into tightly compacted bales. And you can use these bales, if you stack them on top of one another, as the insulation or the wall frames for houses. And this was used back in the 1800s by Nebraskan frontiersmen because they were looking for a way to insulate the house against the very rapidly fluctuating temperatures in Nebraska, where it gets hot in the middle of the day and it gets really cold at night, and then sometimes it's hot and humid one day and then it's kind of cold, raining, and damp the other day. And they found that these worked really well. So you can see here they stack them, and then sometimes they'll have pins to make sure they stay really locked in place. And as it says right here, it offers a very high insulation value because since the straw is tightly compact so much, there's no oxygen in between them, there's nothing that can really penetrate in and out, and the temperature doesn't change as much when you coat it with like a lime plaster coating. And actually, because it's so tightly compact together, it doesn't catch on fire as quickly as a normal mortar and brick building would. And then there's some techniques to it. Some people put it directly on the ground, which has more risk for it getting moisture in it, which when it gets moisture in it, it starts to rot, and then that degrades the foundation of the building, and then you have a collapsed home. So most people will put a foundation along the bottom, such as wood beams or maybe bricks under it, so it raises it off the ground so it keeps the moisture away from the straw bales. So for my original work, I combined these two design principles into a house that could be potentially built if I just felt so inclined to do that. So for the local context, I chose a semi-arid or arid climate. From here you could tell it'd be more of a Southwest USA, Arizona, New Mexico, Southern California type climate. That's really nice for the straw bale because there's a very low to no potential risk of there getting any moisture, because in a desert there really isn't any moisture. And so the house can function as it needs to by keeping the cool air within the house and the hot air without the house, and not having the risk of any moisture, so you have a nice sound peace of mind. I also went with the design of the existing design context of the area and the low plain housing. They have very low roofs to their housing, usually one story, or if there's two stories, it's still a very flat roof. Some of them will have kind of a stucco shingles, and they'll kind of slant, but not at as a great of angle as they do in the Northeast and in some parts of Texas. They also have very smooth lines and smooth plastering, because most of them either use adobe or a lime plastering and not brick. And here's some other examples of the houses. And then this is the product that I completed. This would be the house. As you can see here, it follows the design context by a low one-story roof and very flat lines and smooth edges. You can see right here it has large windows to take advantage of the sunlight throughout the day, and then you can use curtains to really diffuse it during the midpoints of the day when the sun gets very high, and it does get very hot, so you can regulate temperature within the house. There's a path walk right here, and what I wanted to do with the house is I wanted to separate the living room from the bedrooms. That way you weren't having to cool one big unit. You're cooling separate smaller units, that way you used less air. Now, I also use wind catchers to greatly diminish the fact of energy consumption within trying to cool the house. There's still small air conditionings within to start the cool air breeze in case it was a really, really hot day, but it doesn't use as much air conditioning as, say, you were just using a full air conditioning unit and blasting it throughout the whole day. Right here you can see a more up-close picture of the wind catcher. In the middle is kind of a diffuser type wall, so where there's one side the hot air goes out and one side the cold air goes in. And this is actually right above the kitchen, so on one side of it the stove actually connects to it, so that way the smoke and the heat from the stove goes out from the house. The way you don't have fire hazards, or you don't have a large amount of smoke in the house, which can cause the fire alarms to go off, or just it's very bad for the air quality within the house. And you can see here, this is the kitchen-sized living area, and then these are the bedrooms. Here's wind catchers on top of the bedroom as well. And then here's a little inside peek of the bedrooms. They have this would be kind of like a master bedroom. This would be kind of like an in-between bedroom, and then this would be more of a master bedroom as well. Each has its own bathrooms and closets. It would be perfect for a small family. Here you have the patio door to go out to the patio, which would be kind of that area right here. And then depending how big the plot is, you have all that land around you to enjoy as well. All right, so this concluded my first semester. And so for my second semester, I still had my mentor, Mr. Fry, up until that point. So I was still doing work at the Lake Louisville Environmental Learning Area, which, as before stated, is right below that dam that created Lake Louisville. Now, the Lake Louisville Environmental Learning Areas, or what they call LELA, which I'll probably use throughout the presentation because it's a much shorter name to say, their mission is to take that area and educate local citizens about the natural beauty that was in Texas. Before industrialization and suburbs came to Texas, it used to be blackland prairie, where the natural fires would come and burn most of the tall standing trees and plants throughout the year, and you'd have nice smooth prairies going throughout this strip kind of between North Texas, going from North Texas to Central Texas. Right here you can see some of the things they do. They have trails such as the Cicada Trail and the Cottonwood Trails. They have the river, which is actually, this is the start of the Trinity River, and it starts right from the lake, and then they have a valve which they control the flow of the lake going into it, but this is actually the start of the Trinity Lake. And they have people that go rafting or kayaking out throughout the lake, and they have people that sometimes fish in the lake. And then here they have local programs for school kids. When I was there at my time, I actually helped volunteer with this charter school that came because they were required to do service hours to graduate. And so they came and they did small projects such as taking out weeds or planting new plants, or fixing various other projects throughout the Lake Louisville Environmental Learning Area. And so they have a lot of programs for the local kids because in their eyes, that's the best way to change the talk on environmental consciousness and taking care of the planet, because the kids are our future, and what they do is what's really going to impact us, because the people that are already making decisions right now are really stuck in their ways. So we have to impact the people that can be impacted while they can be impacted, to see the beauty that could be had should they choose to take that path. So after a while, I had mutual split with my mentor, so he didn't become my mentor, but that really started, my time with him really started to get me interested in seeing what was the natural beauty kind of in the city of Frisco. You know, in the city of Frisco, we see all the homes and the new things that they're doing on what they call the 5 billion street, where they have the cowboys coming up and all the industrializations coming up. But at one point in time, Frisco used to be just a natural place with animals and wildlife running around. I wanted to see if some of that was still within Frisco. And so right behind where I live on Lebanon is actually part of Stewart Creek, which Stewart Creek runs to Lake Louisville, and it goes throughout Collin County. And so these are some of the pictures that I took in that area around Stewart Creek. Here you can see a nice pine tree between all the trees. And these pictures I took during the winter, so these are with the plants not having out their leaves and other foliage. Here is actually under the overpass over the creek, and here's another picture from underpass under the creek. And Stewart Creek is what people would call a riparian buffer. And what riparian buffers do is they really help purify the water quality, because of all the vegetation that's within the stream. It helps to take away sediment that's within the water that would damage the water quality. And then it helps against erosion, because all the plants that have the roots stuck in that soil, the soil can erode within the stream. And that's really important, because there are many homes built by the creeks within Frisco. There's a couple of creeks like the Stewart Creek, Cottonwood Creek, and one other creek which I can't remember the name. But there are homes built by those creeks and apartment built by those creeks. And if the soil is starting to erode, well, that's going to mess up the foundation, in which case there's going to be a lot of money spent on fixing those foundations, and a lot of unnecessary money that was spent if they had just kept the natural environment around there, which already had their solution to the erosion problems. So here you can see kind of a diagram of what happens. There's the groundwater, and this would be more of a stream, and so the plants, they have the roots stuck in, so the soil can't get into the stream and start eroding and collapsing the riverbank. As I just said, here are the benefits of all of the rip-roaring buffers. It creates nice shade for animals living near a stream, protects it from adjacent land use, removes additional sediment, and stabilizes it from erosion. And this is a picture of one of the banks from the Stewart Creek. And here's there are various other pictures that I have throughout here and larger ones. This is from the overpass. This is in a more open area, and I had to see the snow from the winter area, which I took the pictures. I believe this is a video. This is a video, although I don't know. I'm going to click through it with this. This is a video I took of, this is during the springtime, of one of the banks further deeper into the creek area where there's not a whole lot of development around it. And if I could play the video, you could hear how it's really quiet, and you can hear all the birds singing and the rushing of the water from the creek. And you can really see more of the vegetation that I was talking about that holds the stream banks intact. Part of Stewart Creek actually is going to be incorporated into the Grand Park project. A little bit about the Grand Park project. It's one of the more bigger projects within the city of Frisco. And what they're trying to do is create a large city space that people will want to go and experience the outdoors. As you can see here, they're going to incorporate a lake by backing up some of the water from Stewart Creek, and I guess incorporating more water to making a lake. And they're going to have development right here. This is along Legacy and the Dallas North Tollway, almost going along towards FC Dallas. On the other side of the tollway is this huge area over here. So they'll have the festival greens. They're going to have a mini train that goes around it, and they're going to have some separate lakes. But the part I was talking about with the Stewart Creek right here, if anybody has ever been to Plano, there is a place called Arbor Hills Nature Preserve. And what the city of Plano did is they trapped off this big area and they set it aside as a nature preserve. And so this is the city of Frisco's kind of interpretation of that, as told to me by Mr. Dudley Raymond, who I said was a landscape architect with the city of Frisco. They have the still intact vegetation from the creek, and then they're going to have walk pathways going along it. And this would really be a cool thing, in my opinion, because it incorporates the natural environment from the city of Frisco that it already has, and then by bringing all this development around it, it'll engage the citizens of Frisco into the outdoor environment and encourage them to want to be outdoors and have a space where they want to be engaged in the outdoors and being physically active and really enjoying just the natural beauty that we have to offer in Frisco. So from there, I had a second interview with Mr. Dudley Raymond, in which I talked to him about the ways that the city of Frisco tries to get its citizens incorporated within the natural beauty and the outdoor spaces that they try to plan, such as the parks, the sports fields, and whatnot. And that's where I actually learned about the Grand Park project, which I just discussed. And so after that, one of the things I did, I wanted to take some pictures of the parks that we have and outdoor spaces that we have in the city of Frisco. So one of the parks that I took a picture of is Commons Park, and this is really one of the first parks, major parks in Frisco. I think now it's called Friendship Park or Hope Park. This is the name that most people know it by. This is the entrance. When you drive up, you'll see this entrance. There's a covered pavilion they have where people can have picnics. Right here is they have a pond, and this pond they actually keep stocked with fish so that people can go fishing. Right here in this picture you see a gentleman fishing, and here's a cool picture I took of a couple walking through the park on a daily walk. Here's some more pictures of the walking trail that they have behind it. So they have the entrance to it, and then they have the pond, and then right behind it they have kind of an undisturbed nature walk where they have all the natural vegetation that was there. They just added a sidewalk so you can walk in between it. And then you can see all the trees. This is a really big, I believe, oak tree that's in the more of the further back of that trail. Right here they also have a little stream that goes through it, and you can see again the rip-roaring zone that holds the stream banks intact. Here's a juniper tree that's on the back of the trail, and this trail, it goes up to a certain point, and then it goes up against what I'm assuming is kind of it's either a farm or just a big plot of land where some people have some horses. And they have kind of just a natural, it's not even paved, it's just kind of paths carved in the grass, which you can go back and explore with your pets or whatnot, but make sure to keep them on the leashes because it's still a city ordinance. And then these two gentlemen I actually met at Commons Park, and they were fishing, and they caught 3 smallmouth basses. And this experience that I had with them is one of the things that I think is really cool, and one of the reasons that people should get out more and really go out into the community spaces that the city has set apart to engage into that they already built out. These gentlemen are actually fishing, and he's thinking about going into the Army or into the Navy. And right as I walked up to take a photograph of him, actually, he caught this fish. I mean, like, as soon as I walked up, he caught the fish and asked if I could take a picture of the fish. And this is actually an uncle and his nephew when they're just out having a nice day fishing. And it really shows the goal that City of Frisco has is nice places that families can go and enjoy their time together and enjoying activities that are outdoors and get them outdoors and involved in the things that you really can't buy and enjoy time together, natural time together. So from there, I had to create a final product, and through this whole mantra of change, change at the beginning, change with environmental thinking in mind, and then changing my perspective of nature and the outdoor spaces, I kind of wanted to keep on that mantra of change. And so I thought more of the design thinking, which is kind of how I thought when I did architecture my first year in ISM and the first semester. And in architecture, they use design thinking. And design thinking is a different way of thinking rather than the static way of thinking of a problem which people use in math. They think, or science, they think of, they do like a hypothesis, and then they come up with a method, and then they keep doing these methods over and over until they come up with an answer. Well, with the design thinking, what you do is you come up with all the ideas up front, and then you weed out these answers until you get the final product. And so the first step is to define what you define the problem and its urgency. Then you research the problem, you research the history of the issue and past attempts at it, so you can really see the breadth of the problem and how it can be solved. Then you go and ideate and you brainstorm and get as many ideas out there as possible so you can have a big, wide barrel to choose from when you go into the prototype phase, which is where you combine, expand, and refine those ideas into a few select ideas that can possibly be implemented. An important part of the prototype phase is to seek outside feedback because, like many people, you may think your ideas are totally awesome, but when somebody else sees them, they're like, okay, why does this happen? This doesn't really make sense. And you really get those ideas refined into a more complete and whole idea instead of just something that came up into your head. Number 5 is choose, in which you take those refined ideas and you choose one of the most powerful prototypes and one of the most useful prototypes, and you come up with the product, and what you do in step 6, which is implement, which is when you make your final product. And then in step 7, you have the retrospection, in which you go back and you learn from what you did. In architecture, what they'll do is they'll build a building, and then 6 months to a year from building that building, they'll go back and they'll look at how the structure is holding up, how the foundation's holding up, whether it really met the needs of the community or the client that they made it for, and learn from the mistakes and the successes that they had so they can take this on to future projects. Actually, as I looked at this, I kind of thought it was funny because this is exactly what we do in ISM. We find problems within the topics that we have. We research, we ideate ideas, we make prototypes and kind of our original work in the first semester. In the 5th semester, we choose mentors, and in the 2nd semester, we choose mentors. We implement our ideas into a final product, which is what I'm going to be presenting tonight. And then later on in the process, we'll look back on our experiences in ISM and see what we really learned and what we can really take with us later on in life. So, what you're all here for, my final product. So for my final product, the question I wanted to define was figuring out a way to make, have students live healthier lives. I had done all this research in outdoor living, and one of the things, the conclusions is people that are outdoors and more physical live healthier lives. Research has shown that. And so I wanted to figure out a way to have students live healthier lives. So one of the big things that inhibits living a healthy life, find a way for students to live a healthier life, is stress. Now, everybody has stress, and admittedly there's good stress and there's bad stress. Positive stress to get a project done positive stress when like you procrastinated and you have to stress to finish it, that is somewhat good stress because it's motivating you to a final goal. What I'm talking about is unnecessary negative stress which you put on us. Now stress can be caused by a wide